All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Dedicated Show. We are live today on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. And today we're going to talk about the salty side of analytics. I absolutely love the title. The salt here means S stands for Snowflake, the AL in the salt stands for Alteryx, and then the T for Tableau, and salty because it has a Y, and the Y is all about you. So we're going to talk all about this. We have our guest speaker today, who is Andrew Kim. He is the Alteryx ace and head of enablement at Data Meaning. We're going to bring him up in just a minute. As you're joining this session, since Tableau is one of the things we're going to talk about today, I figured it might be cool to do a giveaway as well for the session, where we'll give away a data to dashboard course with Tableau from the Dedicated Academy. So if you want to enter the raffle to win a course, just type in hashtag SALT into the comments of any social media platform that you're using to join the session. Really, really excited. The course itself really just takes you from a beginner of never having seen Tableau to building your very first dashboard. It's a pretty quick course. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring Andrew Kim up on our virtual stage here. Hello, Andrew. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Kate. Thanks for having me again. I'm really excited to talk with you guys today about the salty side of analytics.
Yes, you're so excited that you did a little promo video in a salt sauna. Tell us more about this.
That was actually really awesome and great timing. So I just got back from Montego Bay yesterday in Jamaica. So welcome everybody. I see a lot of international guests here with us today. I can't wait to travel and see the rest of you, but it was great seeing the community out there and seeing all that they've been striving to build over the last several years since my parents had last been there. And then I had some inspiration in the salt room for a couple hours while I was relaxing during one of the last days of the trip.
Yes, that's awesome. I absolutely love that video. It's always fun when people can just be themselves on camera, and I think it's powerful. People get to know the real you. So thanks for sharing that with us. And welcome back from your vacation. I'm kind of jealous. I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I've been away maybe 2-3 months ago, but it was Florida. It's not like, I know you live in Florida.
It's not like Jamaica, right? Like that's totally different. And I can bring in some Jamaican phrasing as well. Like there something that they say for yes is "ya man." So whenever you hear that all the time, that just means yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can incorporate that for sure. Last time it was all about bees. If you guys remember, Andrew has bees in his backyard, and we might talk about bees today again, because why not?
Exactly.
But before we get into it, quick reminder: as you're joining, hashtag SALT. We've got 10 entries in so far. We'll give away 2 courses, one at the halfway point and another one towards the end of the session. So keep typing in that hashtag SALT throughout the session. And we're definitely taking questions from the audience throughout the session. So don't feel the need to hold off until the end. We are going to take them as they come. George Fierkin is saying that that was a great session. He joined the last session, I guess. And Ravid is, yeah, man, we're enjoying this. So we have to throw that in here. But Andrew, maybe for those who have not seen the previous session and are not familiar with you, I think it's best to get started with a brief bio.
Of course. So hi, everyone. My name's Andrew Kim. I'm the head of enablement at Data Meaning. I've been working with Tableau and Alteryx for a number of years now, over a decade. And then Snowflake has been added to my repertoire the last few years. And as we kind of talk about this is really the stack to beat right now in terms of analytics. When we talk about it, it's exciting because all of these platforms have the same community that we'll kind of touch on later during this session, where we can discuss the interactivity, the free resources that you have available, the type of engagement, and then also how quickly you can get up to speed with these platforms from a self-service standpoint.
Okay, great. And looks like Raymond said you guys are also doing some training for them in EY, so that's good.
Oh yes, we're all over the place. So we actually do, Kate, I don't even know if we've talked about this. So for data meaning, we actually do global trainings. So we have a large presence in Brazil. Um, we do a lot of training in the EMEA, APAC as well, Australia. The US is really strong for us, and that's from coast to coast. So even if you have individuals on your teams that are trying to learn some of these platforms, as we discuss that, some customers that we work with literally have so many people trying to learn these at one time that we do a session early in the morning and then one in the afternoon for the West Coast.
Wow.
So it just kind of breaks it up and gives people a chance to learn and at least get a cup of coffee before you get started with all the excitement.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. We have a good question here. This brings us right into our topic, and the question is, what is salty? What are we talking about here today?
Yes, so this is a great question. Salty, I mean, let's start at the end here. It starts with you, right? And I mean, even though all of us can tell a little salty joke here or there, or be a little bitter about analytics sometimes, really it's the stack that's going to matter. And I think this did used to exist when you had environments like SAP, et cetera, who were trying to solve everything holistically and say, hey, it's a one-stop shop. We've got all your answers here with us today. And what you saw is really you weren't getting best in class in each of
Mm,
those individual areas. So when we look at the overall environment, it started to break apart. And that's where you see components like Snowflake, which is the S in salt, right? Snowflake has the back-end data infrastructure, and that Snowflake in particular is important because what they're doing is they are separating out the compute, which is like the actual raw processing, from the storage. And they're doing that in a cloud format. So the reason why this is so exciting is because now you can really say, hey, I need lots of compute in the morning and I don't want to pay for it the rest of the day. Whereas before, if you're on a traditional database infrastructure, maybe MySQL, MS SQL, Oracle, etc., right?
mhm.
You're limited to those resources, and there may be bottlenecks and stuff in the morning when you're using tools like Alteryx or Tableau, right? Even though they're amazing platforms, they're still limited to the resources in which you're consuming the data from, right? So this provides you that scalability aspect. Then Alteryx is there in the middle because what it allows you to do is grab that data and meet it where it's at. Not everything is going to be up in the cloud as you move beyond the lake into Snowflake, right? And then when we talk about visualization with Tableau, there's different ways that we go about visualizing. So some may require robust transformations from Alteryx, right, or enrichment from a variety of different sources. And in other instances, it may be, hey, we just need that data fast and we need scalability for this one dashboard, or
Right.
for maybe these are outward facing visuals for your customers, which is becoming an increasing occurrence. Is like, hey, I love my data so much, I need to sell it. It's the new oil. So
Yeah.
how do I capitalize on that?
Yeah. So thank you so much for providing that overview. I think it's helpful for the audience to get an understanding of how those three operate in terms of integration, right? Would you
Mhm.
say Snowflake, Alteryx, and Tableau are kind of the best trio out there for this data stack?
Very much so. And here's the reason why. They work very well together, and they
Hmm.
also work, when we say work well together, it doesn't have to feel like a linear process.
Hmm.
So as we discuss this, there are some use cases that actually work really well with just Snowflake and Alteryx, and then
Hmm.
others that are good for Snowflake and Tableau,
Right.
and then there's some that are great with just Alteryx and Tableau, right?
Hmm.
So as you look at this, don't necessarily think of it as being linear. Think of it more being like a triangle,
Right.
and we can build it strong together, or just use a couple of those portions because they're all linked together well.
Right. Thank you for that. We've got plenty of questions coming at you here,
Yes.
which I absolutely love, guys. Keep them coming. It makes our lives easier when we can take questions from the audience, because then we answer the questions that you truly care about. I'll start with Ravit's question here because I do want to talk about data meaning. He's asking about how this data meaning came about and what's the story behind it. And I think if
Mhm.
you can just elaborate on how data meanings works with clients to get them into the salty analytics that we're talking about now.
Yeah, so it's really about extracting the quantum value, right? And as we're doing that for customers, it's about moving beyond just having data and focusing on making the insights that we're gathering actionable. And you'll see that even in our mission statement, right? So how are we extracting the meaning both from a insights perspective and then also from a transformation perspective into action? How are we assisting in that process? And that's what we're there to help all of our clients do as partners. So as we talk about from a partnership perspective, you'll find with us being a full service shop, and we're boutique for a reason. It's because we believe in hiring the best, and we believe in providing the best. We're not in the volume game business.
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of discuss that, the people that you'll see and the content that you'll see us putting out, even via our YouTube channel, is going to provide those levels for you to upskill, and we give all that out for free. So if you're not following us on YouTube or LinkedIn already, please do that. And we actually have shameless plug here. We're launching our LinkedIn presence next week with a bang for 4th of July, and we're actually going to have a 3-part webinar series or LinkedIn Live series, sorry, for Alteryx Server.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be doing those sessions every day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at noon, where it'll probably feel like a roast because we're opening it up to questions to follow up. But it's very exciting to kind of see how that's going to pan through. And I saw there's plenty of other questions here. We can definitely start talking about some of those as well. Like,
Yeah, I just
yeah,
wanted to let people know. So I've shared the link to your YouTube channel there. So go ahead and follow that and data meeting on LinkedIn. Yes, I wanted to get to Ronaldo's question here. Do
Tableau
you
prep.
think, yeah, Tableau Prep could replace Alteryx in the salty acronym?
I really wish that it could. I mean, I'll share with you, Tableau Prep has come a long way. It's not even close to being there yet. In all honesty, I think it can handle some of the light use cases. And basically, what I like to share with everybody when we talk about the whole salt stack, right? Um, there is a wow factor, or as I call like the sizzle factor that sells, right? And that sizzle factor is really Tableau because everybody gets to see it, right? And as we talk about those components, the part that I like to highlight is that you can't have a quality dashboard without everything that's behind it functioning at a high level. So just because I see it initially and it's a good experience doesn't mean when I start to interact with it that it will be, or it will provide me with the depth that I need while still providing that good user experience.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that. We actually had another question here for the relationship between Tableau and Snowflake this time. So is Tableau consuming data from Snowflake?
Correct. And actually, I'm glad that someone brought this question up. If you haven't checked her out already, Eva Murray, Tableau Zen Master, and now she's over at Snowflake and she's a rock star. She actually helped found the Makeover Mondays. So if you're familiar with that within Tableau, she's over at Snowflake and she's doing something incredible. Snowflake has something called a data marketplace. And this is part of the reason why Snowflake is incredible, is what they're doing is they're saying, hey, if data is the new oil, right? How do we start making it accessible for everybody, and how can we create a way to sell this in a marketplace, right? Just like you would see within the commodities market, right? So if data is a commodity, how do we go about selling it? And that's what the marketplace does. So it provides you a couple different ways of going about doing that. And this is what Eva has tapped into, is she's going out there and saying, hey, there's data out here from quick example that I'll give is I'm about to have a baby here in a couple months, and she was showing all of the stats for parental leave in all of the developed countries in the world. And the US is the only one in the world that does not mandate a set amount of time for parental leave. So as we talk about this, there's insightful data that exists out there like that that's already cultivated.
Yeah.
If you're in the data science world, you may have seen something like this from like Kaggle, right? This is kind of taking it to the next level because you can actually sell your data in this marketplace. So the advantage here is if I have a data source, I'll take a quick example. I'm in healthcare, right? I may actually be distributing prescriptions from a pharmacy, right? And you will have pharmacy companies who are selling to you, but they don't get to know anything else other than, oh, Dedicated is selling 500 of my prescriptions every month. But I have no idea what the demographics is going to, right? Everybody needs a little bit of help when they're dealing with data. So as we kind of talk about nursing people back to health, we may want to understand what the demographics, et cetera, are, right? So what if we could provide some of these in an aggregated view and then sell those back to the pharma companies, right? That's a quick
Yeah,
example.
that would be interesting for sure.
The other big market that this is really crushing it with is CPG, which is consumer packaged goods, so retail. Everybody's switching to e-commerce now, so you've got all of those old processes that were formed before where it was pretty easy to track, but now if we're adjusting where we're getting the information from and where people are purchasing, we may need to understand those new behaviors, and now we're looking for sources of data, and it's a marketplace, so some of it's free, some of it's paid, and then if you have that data, you can get paid for selling your data there. So it's an incredible opportunity. So check out Eva Murray, because every week she has been going through and just like the Makeover Mondays, she's been posting a visualization that she's created from marketplace data. So if you want to just follow her and check out, hey, here's all the cool stuff that's available in the marketplace, it can offer you some inspiration.
Interesting. So I've not heard of this marketplace before, and in my mind it brings up a question. People are not always good, right? And
Yes.
that motivation of potentially being paid for data that other companies or other people can use to, drive decision making. Do you think this will end up motivating people to collect data and try to sell it in a way that might not be in line with the greater good?
Mm. So this is very interesting, and we'll kind of get into like some personal things that I like to watch. So I love the show Westworld. If you haven't checked it out, it's on
I have not.
HBO.
Okay.
There they created essentially like a theme park,
Okay.
but it was like the Old West, like the Wild West. And the idea was, hey, if you're rich enough, you can go there and do whatever you want. It's like the Las Vegas of amusement parks, right?
Okay.
So when we talk about that, what they had is they had all these robots who look like humans, um, and those were trained using complex algorithms and AI. And where they got all that data from, this is where it gets interesting, is it's supposed to be sometime in the future. So they collected all that data over years, and then all of a sudden there was this point in time where everybody said enough is enough, you're not allowed to collect data on anybody. So they did it over the course of like 50 years and were able to map out everybody. So it was really cool, right? And
Okay.
I think about this only in term to bring this up in terms of we're already starting to see some of that, right? There's GDPR from California, which, hey, if you're tracking me, I get to choose not to let you do that. Apple's saying, hey, we're going to turn on privacy settings. We may even have a subscription for it. You've got Signal. You've got all these different apps, right? DuckDuckGo. So when we kind of discuss this, I do think that it's important. And it's also important to see, as we look to the future, what data really is being collected. And when
Yeah.
you look in a marketplace, I mean, imagine like going on your credit ratings, right? And being able to validate, one, whether that's authentic, and two, whether you want it to be tracked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think being in this space is incredible. And I'm seeing um, people from Brazil commenting there's LGPD in Brazil, which is data protection. So
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing this holistically around the world where um, it's taking place and we're starting to put those barriers up. So
Yeah.
kind of keep both of those things in mind. I mean, as data scientists, this is a unique opportunity to gather all this information and it may not be available forever. And then
Yeah.
on the flip side, what are we doing to help protect and make people aware? And part of it could be aspects like having visualizations out there
Mm-hmm.
where we're helping to identify.
All right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I know that was a slightly out of left field question. It came up because I'm like, if people can sell data, chances are they're going to go out of their way to collect it the right way or not the right way. But it's interesting to keep an eye on everything that's happening there.
Well, I think it's unique because up until this point, I mean, it's kind of like it reminds me of Hamilton, right? Where the room where it happens,
Yeah.
right? So as we kind of talk about this, the data is being traded behind closed doors, and this kind of opens it up and makes it transparent. So I think that's the exciting piece about it. I am obviously nervous about it, but what I'm hoping is that we won't have any more Cambridge Analytica type feelings where, hey, I didn't even know you were collecting that information, or
Yeah.
I didn't know how much was being collected.
That's true.
Um,
That
and we can kind of,
transparency can definitely help in bringing us to a better state. That's very true.
exactly.
We'll take one question before we give away that first score. So hashtag salt if you want to enter. There was a question, I think Deepak asked this on our first session a couple weeks back, but it's a question regarding Alteryx and how do you use it beyond the normal 14-day trial period? Because as an individual, you cannot afford the price of the Alteryx license. So what are your
Yeah.
tips on that?
So Deepak, great question. What I would recommend doing, if you are a student, they have the Alteryx for Good option
Mhm.
that you can explore. The other thing that you can do is get in contact with one of the reps, or you can reach out to me directly, and then we can discuss some different options there. So like if you're talking with one of the reps, they can extend the trial if you're trying to understand the use case for work. If you're learning personally, then I would recommend getting involved there, or there's Alteryx for Good.
Mhm.
And in some of those cases, what they do is they have nonprofits that have Alteryx licenses where you can get involved by volunteering.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I remember learning about the data for good that Alteryx provides. It's a really cool program, so I highly recommend people go check that out. All right, Andrew, you ready for our first draw, our first giveaway?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Okay, let's do this. I don't have a drum roll, but let's go ahead and draw the very first winner. And I'm gonna write this down. It just makes it easier for me later on when I have to find names. So, congratulations to our Raymond 10. You have won
All
the
right.
Tableau course, Data to Dashboard with Tableau. We'll follow up with you after the session. So, yay, congratulations. We're gonna go back to some of our questions here. There was a question from Dustin, and he's asking, how should we think about statistical analysis and how does it fit into the salty ecosystem?
Ooh, Dustin, this is a great one. So as we kind of start talking about working through what I like to call the exponential curve in terms of analytics, so we can start at the basic with descriptive, right? And then we can work beyond that and kind of work our way up the curve into predictive, and then obviously going into prescriptive analysis. And as we work through that curve, there are different components across the stack that will come into play. So Snowflake is interesting because it does have more advanced analytics capabilities, including integrations with like Python and R. And you can utilize things called UDFs, which are user-defined functions. So you can build it out directly in Snowflake if you would like, depending on how advanced it is. And then across all three of these platforms, if you have Python or R experience from a statistical perspective, R obviously being from a historical aspect, being the most prevalent among those, it will work on any of those three platforms that we're discussing here today. And then in terms of integration from there, Alteryx helps from a statistical standpoint, offering clarity throughout the entire process from a statistical understanding, and then Tableau is meant to display that. And then when we talk about where those calculations need to occur, so if, the phrasing that I will use is typically the earlier you can execute the insights, the better it is from a user experience, right? From a developmental perspective is a little bit more tricky. So as we kind of discuss this, if you're the same person who's handling all three of these, then you've got some flexibility. I like to keep in mind what the maintenance overhead is going to be. The closer you have it to the visualization, typically the harder it's going to be to maintain, because that gives you less flexibility to adjust the visualizations over time. And that's where like you do have the built-in predictive functionality within Tableau, or you can obviously use TabPy, etc., to build in some of those statistical analyses.
All right. Thank you so much for that explanation, Andrew. So none of us were born with the knowledge of how to use Snowflake, Alteryx, and Tableau. I'm assuming you were also not born knowing how to use these tools. So I'd love to, unless you were, you can correct me. You're like, no, I was born and I just knew this. What was your journey like? Which tool did you pick up first? Did you take up any training courses? Did you, go to any specific programs? And what recommendations would you have for someone that's watching the session right now and they're thinking that Salt is awesome and they want to pick up some of these skills? What can they do?
So I think what's impressive now, even since when I started, which, like I said, it's been about a little over a decade now, there is so much more out there that's available in terms of best practices and thought leadership, and also in terms of ways of learning to get things done. So you've got Snowflake has the university, so there's the Snowflake University that you can access free materials on. They have their certifications, which is the SnowPro Core, and then they even have the advanced certifications that are available. Those are $150 and then $300 a piece. So it's not horribly priced if you want to get your certifications there. And I can tell you those are really hot in the market right now. Yeah. When we look at Alteryx, the community is free. You can sign up and learn there. They even have interactive lessons. So if you don't have a license the whole time, you can learn that way. User groups available there. And then also with them, their first two certifications are free. Like jazz hands, like yeah, man, like you should totally be taking advantage of that. And then I'll throw in another Jamaican phrase here, which is bless up, because they're like everything up, man. Like that's how positive they are, right? And that's the feeling that you get from this entire community. It is like an analytics island, right? So when we talk about that, what's impressive is with Alteryx, you have the user groups available. And you see the same thing with Tableau. So literally during this session right now, I'm actually, I have some of my teammates moonlighting, and they're running the Tableau user group for Orlando. And we have people from the US Census who are presenting during that session. So it's incredible. to kind of see the community coming together and how you can really engage and enjoy. So as we talk about this, I was fortunate in my journey to stumble upon Alteryx and Tableau at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people tend to pick up one tool by
Right.
themselves.
Yeah.
And what I find is that if you're working with visualization and you're kind of stuck where the load times, et cetera, are getting a little bit excessive, or you feel like you're stagnating, I would look at picking up Alteryx because you can integrate a lot more. Tableau Prep has come a long way. I mean, you can start to prove out the value even with that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it brings the A game all the time when you're using Alteryx. Then as we talk about Snowflake, if you have database experience, SQL, et cetera, skills, then you can start interacting with Snowflake. And what I would recommend doing is check out their site. We have a link that we can share with you. They'd give $400 worth of free credit for
Mm-hmm.
you to use. And as you talk about that, I mean, that's enough definitely to go through all their course material and kind of learn what the platform is. And it's an MPP platform, so massive parallel plot processing, and it can go on AWS, it can
Mm-hmm.
go in Google Cloud, or it can go on Azure. So it's cloud agnostic, and it really allows you that scalability to kind of take things to the next level. And I mean, that's been my latest venture, is into Snowflake.
Yeah.
And I think what's exciting there is there were lots of scale related problems that were harder to solve, and it basically just boom, it leveled the playing field for those.
Hmm. Interesting. And I've shared that link for the $400 credit across all the platforms, so you guys can go check that out. Before we have so many more questions that came in for you, which I love, guys. Thank you so much. I just want to talk quickly about job opportunities, right? So if someone has the SALT stack, do you think that that is powerful in this space? And maybe we can pair that with Christiane's question here, where she's asking, would you consider a lack of analytical skills if we don't work with Alteryx, but with Snowflake and Tableau? Because I'm guessing Alteryx is the responsibility of another team in the company. So,
Yeah, so I think this really is an interesting topic because um, it's about choosing a career track in terms of being more of an analytics generalist, right? Versus being somebody who's more focused and more of a principal. So I think it really depends on what type of company or what you enjoy doing. So the individuals who typically get involved from like Snowflake to Tableau are ones who want to see the analytics all the way through, right? So at that point, you have a lot of diverse skills that you need to procure over time. I don't think if you have two of these skills, you're at any loss in terms of job opportunities. I mean, like seriously, send me your resume right now, and we probably have work for you to do. If you only have one, I would definitely recommend exploring another. And then if you have three, I mean, the opportunities are seriously limitless. And when we talk about that salary wise, if you're looking at doing a private company, depending on your geography here in the US, I mean, you're looking at 120, 180,000 a year as a base salary. Obviously, if you just have one of these skills, it's going to be in the mid to high sorry, that's six figures here. No, it is
right.
five figures. Sorry, mid five figures here. So like anywhere from 50 to 100,000. And then as we talk about having two of those skills, you kind of can start to break the 100,000 mark. So obviously check this out on Glassdoor. You can see all the job postings, etc. And when we start to explore that, I think that's where there are some advantages. And really the key that I would recommend focusing on is what are you passionate about? Because remember, you're going to want to do this day in, day out. And if you're going to go work for a company like Amazon, right? All the big the FANG, right, is going to be looking for skills like this. And it is going to be a grind, right? But the idea is really that it shouldn't feel like one. And as we talk about exploring different data sets, it should be exciting, and you should get to work with. An example would be one of the guys on our team was working with Parkinson's, and how could you predict that with a data set from Snowflake, right? And that's incredible that we're able to solve problems like this with our fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. It's especially interesting that the salary ranges, they're really up there. And I think your point about being a generalist versus specialist is a really good one. If people simply want to know how to use all of the tools, then being a generalist is definitely up your alley, and you can be powerful in knowing how all of those interact. But I think you can still hit the higher numbers even if you know just one tool, if you're really, really good, right? If you're just so
Yes.
good with either one of those three tools, I think chances are you can hit the six figures fairly easily as well, depending on the company needs and the competition and geography and other items. I think you can get there. We have a question here from Robert Vane. He's asking, how do you reconcile the ease of Alteryx and the ability to pretty much do what you want as a data analyst against the need to productionize an analytics service for wider use?
This is a great question. So I think as we kind of look and explore what is happening with the environments overall, right? So we see SAP, hey, highly controlled environments, Oracle, et cetera, right? Where it's consolidated from a enterprise analytics platform. And then now where things have kind of exploded and there's best in class across each of these. I know that there may feel like there's some loss in terms of control. And as we discuss how the enterprises are evolving, I think overall we're becoming more analytics mature. And when we discuss that, that does mean that, hey, as a member of our analytics society, or even as I call it, a COE or Center of Enablement, right? Our jobs should be focused around treating each other like clients, and then also the we are becoming more analytics savvy. So that means starting with simple things. If you haven't checked them out from Dark Horse before, they've got some amazing graphics with this, like how do you transition from a pie chart into better analytics, right? And they literally step by step take it from like one of those 3D Excel pie graphs into a bar chart that's highlighted and can show you specifically what you need, right? We're being bombarded with all these different analytics,
Right.
And we've got to make sure, hey, it's still a single point of truth. We're all trusting each other. Again, this is where Snowflake comes in handy, because then you can do chargebacks to each department, get crazy with things. And when we talk about Alteryx, right, having that continuity in terms of being able to see the processes, and they're continuing to work and evolve these processes, I think is important. So a lot of that is from a cultural perspective. It needs to be worked out. And we do a lot of advisement in this particular area. And as we discuss this, what's incredible and what you really see is you can take this to the next level within your company with just a small group of people, and then really cultivate it just like a user group, right? It should be communal, and with getting people involved and different skill sets, now you can custom build tools within Alteryx, right? You see templates coming out of Tableau, and then you can have single sources of data from Snowflake, which not everybody needs rewrite permissions from. You can say, hey, I'm just going to give you access and share this with you. And then you can do your own thing, and you're not even going to be using my resources, even though I'm the steward of the data, right? So from an operating model, Robert, I see you're asking about from prototyping to full-scale production. What I typically see happening is you may start with a database, right, a standard one, or even an extra small Snowflake warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we talk about from a scale perspective, you could keep it extra small and be charged pennies for usage, right? Or you could take this up to terabytes. And as we talk about this, this is where I think it's important to have the whole salt stack.
Yeah.
Is it's not going to be one size fits all,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and when I say that, that's an analytic solution. You are not necessarily going to use all three of these components. And when we discuss them, Snowflake is the only one that's on demand right now. I see that changing probably over the course of time, where you'll also could be charged or choose a usage model for for Alteryx and Tableau. So as we
Mm-hmm.
discuss this, we'll need to be prepared for that going forward. And then from a prototyping perspective, hey, this works, and then I can dial it up for a second, right? And then see how it works and how it functions with maybe near real-time data or real-time data. And then, okay, I've still got some things to work out. Let me dial it back down and
Yeah.
work on those improvements.
Yeah, you just you mentioned Snowflake just now, which is great because I had a question from Raymond about are there any competitors of Snowflake, right? Is it always salt or could it be gold or a alt, you know?
Yeah, so I think there are definitely some. I mean, if you check out like Exasol is another one. Um, I mean, you do have a little bit with like uh, ADLS, which is Azure Data Lake Storage.
Mm-hmm.
There's some components there. There's some nuances that exist, right? And as we kind of talk about all those, the new MPP platforms that are coming out, I won't really mention any of those, but if you look at like Gartner and stuff, there are some new ones that are coming out. I don't think they're as robust yet. I think this is going to be the side of the market that really starts growing, and I would expect to see some heavy growth over the next 5 years. And as we kind of talk about this, Snowflake, just like Tableau, is really the one that is taking the lead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my chips are stacked, so to speak.
All right. Thank you. Ronaldo wants a clarification here. The Alteryx here, is it Alteryx Server or Alteryx Designer, or is it both?
I think it's really it can be both, right? And as we
Mm-hmm.
talk about from a scalability perspective, um, you could start with like Tableau Online, right? And Designer and Snowflake. And if you think about this, literally, if you're an individual just trying to produce a prototype, almost like Robert was talking about, right? I've got $400 worth of credit from Snowflake.
Right.
I've got 2 weeks with Alteryx and 2 weeks with Tableau. I'm not even kidding. Literally in 2 weeks, you could build out a solution with all three. That's kind of highlighting the value in terms of prototyping. When we talk about these components in particular, what you'll see is with the scalability and reusability, you can reuse the code if you're doing it directly with streams, like with Snowflake, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can reuse that code for production. That's going to be hard coded, just like you would have with a uh, standard SQL query or script, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I were utilizing those as options, I'm not going to have that same level of flexibility to adjust and iterate as I would like with Alteryx. Or we could use like Tableau. It's going to have the dynamic query capabilities where it can query Snowflake directly based on the data that it's using in the visualization, which is a newer feature within the last year or two. So I think there's definitely a handful of opportunities that exist, and you can see people commenting now. Azure Synapse is a
Yeah.
component within the Azure stack, right? They've
Mm-hmm.
rebranded it a few different times at this point. And then as we talk about that storage, the ADLS component for Gen 2 storage is the back end of Snowflake when it's on Azure as well, just like S3 is for Amazon whenever you put Snowflake on there. So each of them have their own components and they're all kind of feeding off of each other. And what I see kind of coming across as we explore this is you have the NoSQL infrastructure, which did exist. I think they were missing some of those scalability components, like Teradata. There's some limitations that we've had customers hit. It's still strong in terms of a presence, both in Gartner as well as Forrester, right? But I see them losing some momentum with some of the limitations that exist in those environments.
All right. So Andrew, at Data Meeting, you mentioned you help clients with, consulting, implementation, taking them from the full spectrum of starting out with these tools all the way to the very end, as well as training. So I wanted to ask, from your experience, what have you seen to be the biggest struggle in terms of rolling this out? Would it be the Snowflake, the Alteryx, or the Tableau aspect?
I think the biggest problem is not taking a moment to breathe because everybody's so excited to jump into analytics. And we'll get invited to kind of talk about one of the components, and like I have this amazing dream, right, of the dashboard. I just was inspired on my vacation. I had a moment of silence, right, to kind of pull things together. And I think that's great, but we have to remember, and this is where having generalists on the team, or more importantly, as you highlighted, you can really make six-figure income, no problem, by focusing on one area, but you've got to be a strong collaborator. And so as we kind of talk about this particular point, what I want to highlight is making sure that you're asking, hey, where is the data coming from? Is it ready? Right? So when we say ready, like has somebody, when I say somebody, a subject matter expert who is going to be looking at the end analytics, have they looked at some of the detailed level data to see if it just makes sense, right? Because when we have a lot of hands touching the assembly line, we tend to lose pieces along the way.
Yeah.
And something that I talked about during the last session is really about focusing on not just you being the sole person who's concerned about, maybe typically I sit in the middle with Alteryx, right? But if I'm handing this off to someone who's going to be working on a Tableau visualization, or even if I'm doing it myself, I want to make sure that they have everything that they need. And typically they're the only ones viewed as a client. What we also need to make sure of is if there's a DBA on the other side, right? They are also your client because they're going to be providing you with what is supposed to be quality data. And we need to have a collective conversation about what does the overall state of this look like. And to the question earlier about statistics, I think the exciting and anxious part that I always think about is things are moving faster. And we want the answers faster. The answers, when they are faster, are not black and white. There's more gray that exists, and we are not very good at communicating gray. And that's where having these conversations and learning to communicate the gray allows us to feel comfortable about making the decisions that we are going to need to make at the time with the best information that we have at that given point in time. And then we also, which this is where Snowflake has access to the time machine, which literally lets you look back at historically at the database at a given snapshot, just like you would have, like if you're used to Apple, they have the time machine on your iMac, right? So being able to look back at that particular data set that day is also important because we may look back at things like COVID. Oh man, we made some stupid decisions for our company during that time, right? But we didn't know what we didn't know at the time. And then how can we better prepare ourselves for making those knee-jerk decisions? Maybe we need to phase it out, or maybe we need to say, okay, halt everything. And again, let's make a level-headed decision. And when we talk about this, that's easy to discuss on a single use case. Robert has a question where he's saying, hey, I'm dealing with 1,000 concurrent use cases, right? How do I coordinate the data modeling, the governance, and the documentation.
Right.
So from a governance perspective, using the self-service platforms, you can automate. If you don't have like Confluence, Jira, etc. in your environment, I would recommend getting one of those components. And that's where having some of these conversations is useful. So when we talk about documentation, there's active documentation that can be built in some of these platforms. There's the Alteryx Server Usage Report. If you check out on the Alteryx community, there's the auto documentation workflow, which literally it's like using Alteryx to parse Alteryx. It's inception level stuff, like mind blown. When we talk about that, it's important because it will literally go through and document business rules, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Alteryx in its entire platform has Connect, which helps visualize this with a Nexus view, so you can see where the data came from, what visualizations it's supporting. Those components are important. And then in terms of coordinating data models, you have choices here where you can pull the salt stack together, or you could go with like something like Azure and do the full Microsoft stack and kind of utilize that holistically. Again, I think some of the onus is on your business to kind of determine what that documentation level is. And we work with clients in finance, government, healthcare, and then even some retail clients. And then those requirements in terms of documentation, et cetera, are all over the place. And you even heard someone from EY.
Yeah.
We work with other consulting firms helping them.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. I think I know, Andrew, we're getting close up to our time. So we do have one more course we're giving away. So hashtag salt. But I did want to take this question that kind of takes us back to the conversation around careers, jobs, and certificates. Marcus is saying that, having an Alteryx designer core and advanced Tableau specialist and associate certifications, what would you say is the next recommended step? Is it to go for the Alteryx server and Tableau server, or should Marcus rush to Snowflake?
So Marcus, this is a great question. The key that I would highlight here is there is, I feel, a separation, and we find this even when we're doing interviews, between somebody who focuses more on architecture and is more responsible for some admin components compared to someone who is actually doing analytical work. And this is something that's interesting. So if you enjoy doing server components, Alteryx, Tableau server, or even being a DBA, there's definitely money to be made there. It's a whole different type of headache is what I'll share with you, because I actually do a lot of both. Again, that takes time, right? When we look at these, it's a little harder to get exposure to the server certifications. Like with Tableau, you're going to have to find a place where you can utilize a Tableau server, right? They just don't go giving those keys out. And then with Alteryx, there is actually an Alteryx server partner certification. So if you're a member of their partner or your company is, then you can take that certification, but they haven't released one yet for your average user. I do see that coming probably in the next year or so. So my recommendation is if you do want to stay on the analyst track or even like a data engineer, then I would recommend going more horizontal, which would be rush into Snowflake, as you had pointed out. If you are looking to say, hey, let me up my game and I'm going to take this and learn about servers, you'll have to learn things like SSL certificates. Authentication is probably one of the biggest headaches that will come into play. And then components around upgrading, permissions, etc. All of those components are important. Honestly, even just having site administrator admin access and understanding is extremely helpful, and you don't necessarily need to go through installing the server or upgrading the server. A lot of companies, if you're looking in the consulting area, will do training for that. Or if you're a company that is implementing one of those, typically you'll have a partner or the technology company come in and help you with that.
All right. Yeah, it looks like David here does that, maintains Alteryx and Tableau servers, and does the analytics for his day job. Awesome, awesome. And Ravid says you're just top class with salt. Andrew, you're super salty. People love it. I'm gonna go ahead and do our last giveaway here. So drum roll, please. We've got 30 entries. Good luck, everybody. We're gonna draw for the Data to Dashboard course with Tableau. And the second winner here is... No, we're gonna have to redraw. Raymond.
Doubling down.
Raymond, this is just not fair. You can't take the same course twice. You're not gonna get value out of taking it again. So we're gonna redraw. StreamYard. Okay, Keisha, there you go. Much better.
Hey, Keisha.
Congratulations.
And Raymond, I think you need to go buy a lottery ticket today.
I know. He actually, I remember he won a dedicated pillow at my last conference. So he's just a lucky guy. I love this. Raymond, I don't know if you have some kind of trick you're doing here with StreamYard. Whatever you're doing is working. So one day when I give away $1 million, yeah, he seems surprised. So I love it. Andrew, thank you so much for a really, really great session. This was really, really eye-opening for me. I think I'm going to go back to reading my Snowflake book that their CEO wrote, because I started it. It was a really good book. I know that's where everything is headed. And I think staying on top of it is really important. If people want to continue the conversation, I know we told them, follow Data Meeting, go to datameeting.com, follow you guys on LinkedIn, YouTube. But if people want to continue the conversation with you specifically, what's the best way that they can reach you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. It's Andrew Data Kim is the easiest way to find me. So Data is my middle name, not actually. It does. My middle name does start with a D, but
okay. It'd be fun.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Again, even if you're looking for a position, right? We've got tons of positions that we're hiring for, or if you just have questions, I'm more than happy to help. I love supporting the analytics community, and I'm excited to see what the next 10 years holds, especially like Kate, we didn't even get to talk about the bees this time.
The bees, landscaping business, and Cold Stone ice cream. Those were all topics that we didn't get to because we are running out of time. But maybe at the next session, Andrew, people will, be anticipating this talk.
That sounds exciting. That sounds exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. You've got a lot of compliments coming in here. So thank you again for your time. And thanks to everybody who joined and participated and added some really great questions and comments. Have a great rest of your, Thursday? And have a good weekend.
All right. And bless up, everybody.